Street Fighter V is going to be releasing later this year in 2015. And recently, we have seen that Chun-Li is going to be making his return in this game, making his Street Fighter return in Street Fighter V. But now here's the real question that all Street Fighter fans need to be asking themselves about Street Fighter V. What other characters could very well be returning in this game? What other characters could potentially making their debut in this game? In this video, I'm going to be doing my top 15 characters I could see either returning or making a debut in Street Fighter V. Stay tuned.
Number 15, Birdie. When it comes to Birdie, he hasn't really been seen since like the Alpha series, and I think he would be an interesting character to bring back to the Street Fighter franchise because of his moveset. He is basically that powerhouse character, but he's not really like Zangief or really like Abel or really like any of those powerhouse type characters. He's basically his own type of character. He has an interesting personality, and he has a very interesting look to pretty much bring back. And there seems to be quite a bit of people that actually like this character. And, you know, he was introduced in, he was introduced in the original, I believe, and then they brought him back with the Alpha series. So I'm thinking when it comes to, like, you know, Birdie, he'd be an interesting character to bring back basically because of his moveset, you know, potential, his original look, character, his backstory, people that like him. He is pretty much well demanded for occasionally, I see. Now, he's only 15 on my list because I'm not that big a fan of him, but I put him on the list nonetheless because I do think there is room to bring him back for Street Fighter V. And he would diversify the roster, to say the least. I basically said that about him. Number 14, Ingrid. Ingrid's last appearance in the Street Fighter series, I believe, was Alpha 3. She did have a pretty interesting moveset. She's kind of like a fast fighter that has, from what I remember from what I've been looking up to, some aerial moves. She seems to be pretty much like you can jump around the stage with her quite a bit, and she basically has a fairly interesting moveset that deals with speed and taking out her opponent. I think she'd be an interesting female character to bring back to Street Fighter, in the sense that she actually seems to have an interesting design to her that you don't really see in many of the other female characters of Street Fighter, and she can kind of be like that one of the rivals to basically someone like a Sakura, pretty much. And it'd be interesting to see a character like her return and be able to go against like some of the new female characters that basically, you know, have come into Street Fighter over the years after, you know, the Alpha series. So when it comes to Ingrid, I basically think she just would be an interesting inclusion to bring back. She's not one of my top choices. That's the reason why she's at number 14. She's not really a must, but she would be a fun inclusion for people to play as. And I'm sure she has some fans out there that actually would like to see her back. Number 13, Maki. Maki originally made her debut not in Street Fighter, but in the Final Fight series. I believe it was Final Fight 2, where she made her original debut, but since then she did show up in the Street Fighter series, I believe in Alpha 3, I think it was, and I think she was in the Capcom vs. SNK game. So she has had appearances before, so it's not like she's like a character that never showed up in Street Fighter. She started off in Final Fight and she did make an appearance in Street Fighter at least once, and then a crossover game like once or twice. You know, and her style would be pretty much, you know, unique and different because she uses that tonfa, which kind of puts her in the Cody category because Cody uses a knife, even though some of his attacks use a knife. In Street Fighter 4, you can pick up the knife. I forgot if he actually has ever had that in the past Street Fighter games. It's not coming to my mind right now, but it kind of makes her like Cody, not in terms of using a weapon, and also in terms of the fact that Cody also originated from Final Fight. So bringing her back would pretty much bring a unique female character that I believe a lot of fans would pretty much like to play as. Number 12, Dean. Now, when it comes to Dean, he has actually never been in a Street Fighter game. His only appearance that I could recall to this day is being a playable character in Final Fight 3. Now, I include him because I think it would be kind of, interesting to see, more Final Fight characters actually get into Street Fighter. The world, the universe is technically tied into, the Street Fighter universe, and it's not like his fighting style doesn't really speaks Street Fighter. He's basically a brawling guy in the streets, and he kind of would have that tough guy power move type moveset, and he would fit right in with the likes of Cody and Guy, who have also been from the Final Fight series and made numerous appearances in Street Fighter. So, I mean, Dean isn't a guy I could really see much in the game. That's the reason why he's only like 12. But I think I'm pulling for him a little bit. I think he's on the list mainly due to the fact where it would be an interesting inclusion to actually see him in. Number 11, Q. Now, Q's last appearance was in Third Strike. He was one of the new characters that made an appearance in that game, and pretty much only that game. He hasn't been seen, I don't think, anytime since, unless there was a crossover game and he was a character playable in that. But in terms of the Street Fighter series only, he's only had an appearance in Third Strike. And he's kind of an interesting character in the fact that he does have an original appearance, wearing the trench coat, the mask on the face. He kind of has a unique fighting style that he could bring to the table. A lot of people do like him. I think he was one of the more popular characters, I believe, in Third Strike, and I think he has a fan base that wants to bring him back, and he would pretty much fit more, into the Street Fighter storyline, like with the continuation in Street Fighter V scene, where, Q can go, like how he can interact with, like, the old cast that might have been, in Third Strike, as well as some of the newer cast, or characters that weren't even in, that were, before Third Strike but weren't in Third Strike, Like, it'd be, like, for someone like him, I just think he's kind of a unique character. I was kind of a fan of his in Third Strike. I think I would like to see him come back, and I think more people would like to see Q come back as well. Number 10, Victor Ortega. When it comes to Victor Ortega, he is yet another character just like Dean that has never appeared in a Street Fighter game before. His only appearances that I know of to this day is the Saturday Night Slam Master games, where he is usually the final boss. At least in one of them, he was like the final boss, the big main guy. When you start the game and the guy that tears his shirt like Hulk Hogan, that dude, like the big powerhouse pro wrestler dude, and like just like Final Fight, Saturday Night Slam Masters fits right in with the Street Fighter, continuity, the Street Fighter storyline. And I think seeing him actually make a Street Fighter debut would actually be kind of cool, because he's, we get another pro wrestler character, and he's I don't know if he necessarily is a good guy or a bad guy, but he kind of can play the role of both, I guess. And he's like that intimidating pro wrestling character that can pretty much just pound you in the match. So he's basically would be definitely a very powerhouse character. Now, when it comes to Saturday Night Slam Master characters, he's not really one of the ones I would recommend highly to make a Street Fighter debut, but I put him at number 10 because I think it would be quite interesting to see him make a Street Fighter debut. Number 9, Mika. Now, when it comes to Mika, she basically is a professional wrestler type lady wearing, the kind of like almost like a luchador type mask, and her last appearance was in Alpha 3, I believe, and she hasn't showed up since, but her style would be kind of different because it's like fast-paced wrestling. She has a unique style with her outfit, and even though she's only had one appearance, I do believe she's quite popular, because when they were bringing out that like Ultra Street Fighter 4 version, I've seen a lot of people wanting her to be one of the new characters in it. So with that much demand for like an updated version of Street Fighter 4, I think it's pretty much likely that a lot of fans want her in the new Street Fighter game. And to see her return after all these years to the series, I think would bring a smile to a lot of fans' faces. Number 8, Sean. Now, Sean is another character that hasn't been seen since the Street Fighter 3, since Third Strike, since the third game of the series. And I do tend to see him requested quite a bit too. Um, and I think he's quite a likable character in his fighting style. It's kind of based. It's pretty similar to like a Ken and Ryu almost, but a little bit differently to the point where he's not exactly like them, but he's fairly similar, having like his own moves like the basketball and everything, and his own style being almost like very street, warrior type thing, where he's not really like full on like weird the gi and be noble type of stuff, where he's like more of like a street fighter type of thing, but he honors like that style that kind of go with Ken and Ryu. Um, and I do see him requested quite a bit. I do like the character a bit, and putting him here at number 8 was actually kind of he's kind of in the middle of the list. Like, he's not one of the characters I want to see the most, but I do want to see him more than a lot of characters. I do like Birdie and Hugh and whatnot. So Sean is a character I would like to see come back, and I do think other fans want to see him too. Number 7, Juli Juni. Now, I include both these characters on the same spot because their fighting styles are pretty much the same. They are kind of like Ken and Ryu to each other. Like, they have pretty similar fighting styles with maybe a bit of difference here and there. I don't think either of them have been seen since Alpha 3, but they are part of the Bison Dolls. They basically were the original Bison Dolls that were playable. If you don't know what the Bison Dolls are, look at DeCapre in the new Ultimate Street Fighter 4, whatever it's called, the newest one. They basically, the alliance with where she's from, like the women that work for M. Bison. These were basically like the original 2 that were playable. Like, there's like 8 of them or so, but only ones we really ever seen playable, I believe, until like DeCapre showed up recently, were these 2, Juli and Juni, and a lot of fans seem to like them a bit. I think their fighting styles, would be like DeCapre, except for all the crazy crap that she can do with the claw and whatnot. And I think they're important enough to the story and have enough fan base to pretty much warrant their returns. I put them on the same spot, like I said, mainly because of the fact that they have pretty similar fighting styles, but this spot is basically shared for 2 characters I think should come back into the game, and I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. Number 6, Karin. Karin is yet another character that hasn't been seen since Alpha 3, which, judging by my list, a lot of these characters have not been seen since the Alpha series or Third Strike. And showing by the demand some of these characters seem to get, it seems like a lot of these characters have fan bases. Now, when it comes to Karin, she's basically like the counter opposite to someone like Sakura. She basically was like a rival to Sakura, kind of like Ken is to Ryu. Basically, she has a similar fighting style in the sense where, she's kind of like the fast female fighter that does moves that could probably be similar enough to Sakura in the sense where she's, different enough but similar at the same time. And the character's story basically has, I believe, intertwined with Sakura. I think she is considered a rival to Sakura. And I think this character gets this is one of the characters I do tend to, I think, hear a lot of fans wanting. And I may not be the biggest fan. I know I'm putting her at 6 right here, but I'm putting her probably more here because I think it'd be kind of cool to see her get back, and because a lot of people tend to want to have her back. And she reached number 6 on my list, so yeah, I think it would be cool to see Karin back in Street Fighter. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of her, but I think the character concept is cool, and the fan demand is enough there to warrant her to be at 6th place on my list. Number 5, Batsu. Now, here's yet another character on my list that's basically not even from a Street Fighter game to begin with. He's from the Rival Schools series, which, just like Saturday Night Slam Masters and Final Fight, is intertwined with the Street Fighter storyline, namely because it's the origins of Sakura. And Batsu's basically the main character, if not one of the major characters from that series. He has yet to make an appearance in Street Fighter, which I think I think he's one of the characters that hasn't made an appearance in Street Fighter at all that I think I'm warranting for the most because I do think he's a pretty cool character. I never really played Rival Schools, but I did play as him in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, so he has showed up in side games and collaboration games, but he's never really showed up legit in Street Fighter. And I think his style would be kind of cool, and you can his story intertwines with Sakura, who's already in the story, so if you throw him in there, he's already pretty much well balanced in the story. He just would be basically meeting the likes of Sagat and Ryu and Guile and all that stuff. So he's basically just going to be meeting with a ton of characters he's never met with, while knowing the fact that he's connected to Sakura in some way, shape, or form from the fact that they're both from the same series. Number 4, Alex. Alex is another character that hasn't been, seen since Street Fighter 3, since Third Strike. He basically was like pretty much one of the major new characters that was included in that game, like being the powerhouse American type, so looked kind of like a soldier type character. And I think his style is pretty cool, being like he's not really slow, but he's not really fast, but he has some speed and he can do power attacks, but he's not like he's kind of in the middle almost in a sense. And I do think he was one of the more popular characters from that game. And I do see people requesting him quite a bit, and I request him quite a bit because he's one of the characters I definitely want to see back in Street Fighter because I played as him a lot in Street Fighter 3 and Third Strike, and that's the reason why I put him so high on the list because I'm actually a pretty big fan of the character, and I think other people actually are kind of too, so, the reason why he's on my list. Number 3, Gunloc. Gunloc is from the Saturday Night Slam Master series. He's basically one of the major main characters from that series. He's basically, a wrestling type character. And unlike, Ortega, he's more, or even Mika, he's kind of like Mika in the sense where he's kind of fast, but he's kind of like Ortega in the sense that he's powerful, but he's not too powerful, but he's not too fast. He's kind of like an average wrestling type character. And I do think, like, bringing him in would actually be kind of interesting, especially due to the fact that, at least in quotation I'm putting here, at least in the American translation, there is some sort of connection he has being a brother of Guile, which in the Japanese version isn't true, but you can kind of maybe intertwine that as a story in his arcade mode. Like you can kind of you can basically say that they know each other at the very least. So it's kind of like storyline wise, kind of like how Charlie and Guile are connected. You can kind of throw Gunloc in there and connect him to Guile as well. And I do think his wrestling style actually brings something different. That's different than someone like Mika, and different than someone like Victor Ortega, and different than any wrestling type character in the series that we already have. Like, right now, like the Luchador El Fuerte, he has his own, he's like strongman style. He's basically with some speed to him. So I do think Gunloc would be an interesting inclusion to actually make a debut and a return out of nowhere, because he hasn't been seen since Saturday Night Slam Masters, which hasn't been seen for a very long time, since the 90s, to come back in the series. And I liked him in that game a bit, and I do think it'd be kind of cool to bring him back out of the blue and show people a character like Gunloc in a series like Saturday Night Slam Masters. Number 2, the Scorpion / the Astro. Here's yet another character from Saturday Night Slam Masters. You guys seen the connection here? I like the series. But yeah, the Scorpion, the Astro, it's two different names. Like, his American name's the Scorpion, his Japanese name's the Astro. So, I don't know which version they would go with if they ever brought him back in, for Street Fighter, it probably would be the Astro. But whatever. He's a pretty cool character from the Saturday Night Slam Masters, series, kind of like a luchador type wrestler that's not like El Fuerte, where he's more serious, and he's kind of a villain in a sense. He's not really like a good guy wrestler. He's more like a villain in the series, and he has luchador type moves, but he's still kind of strong, so he's not super fast and super jumping everywhere, but he's kind of has some strong attacks, but he still can jump a bit. And then he has electric-based attacks, so he's not going to be full-on legit like a wrestler, kind of like I said Gunloc would be, or Victor Ortega would be. He would have typical Street Fighter moves using electricity too, and I do think he's so awesome. He's one of my favorite characters from the series, and the reason he's especially this high on this list, I really want to see him come back. I really would like to see. First off, I really would like to see Saturday Night Slam Masters come back, but having Scorpion, having Astro in Street Fighter would be darn well enough. Like, he's probably one of my favorite characters from the first Saturday Night Slime Masters, which really is the only one I played. But I think his style would bring something different, and basically I'm just a big time fan of the character and really would like to see him basically in the Street Fighter lore, the Street Fighter continuity himself. And number 1, Mike Haggar. Now, Mike Haggar darn well deserves to be in Street Fighter. If they could put in Guy and they could put in Cody, they could put in freaking Mike Haggar, the remaining third of the main characters of the original Final Fight. He's shown up in Marvel vs. Capcom. He's shown up in a bunch of side games. Put him freaking in Street Fighter. A lot of people want him. A lot of people wanted him in Ultra Street Fighter 4. He's so much an awesome character, being a powerhouse wrestler, being easily an opponent and a rival of Zangief. Like, there's a lot of demand for him. I want him in the game so much because he's so awesome. I do like the character quite a bit, and he's probably the most requested, or if not one of the most requested characters for Street Fighter V. So it's easily the reason why I put him at number 1, not just because I want him, but because practically everyone wants him. He'd finally make his debut. He'd complete the original Final Fight trio, not the rest of the characters from Final Fights 2 and 3 and anywhere after that, but he'd complete it with Guy and Cody have basically both been in since the third one, or really, actually since the Alpha series, sorry about that, and made a return 4. It's freaking Mike Haggar! And he is my number 1 to bring back in Street Fighter V.